Buying a pair of studio monitors is probably the most confusing part of building a home studio. What size should you get? Which brand is better? How much do you have to spend? I'm going to answer these questions and more, and I promise this will be the last video that you have to watch before making a purchase. So what makes studio monitors different from other speakers? The biggest and most important difference is the frequency response. So studio monitors give a relatively flat response while normal consumer speakers give a more polished and colorful sound. Good example of this would be your pictures before and after an Instagram filter. What you see with your naked eye is beautiful and you like it, but to make it ready for Instagram, you give it that pop of color. So imagine that sound is represented in this graph. Studio monitors would follow a more flat response like this, while the most common shape for consumer speakers is more like this, which is often referred to as a V shape. This then gives the sound a boost in the low and high frequencies, which we just happen to like, and it sounds more flattering. Making music on these would be a terrible idea because you'd be mixing your track thinking that your bass is enough, but in reality it's very low. It's just being boosted in the speaker. Meaning that if you take the same track and play it in another pair of speakers, it would sound bad and without bass. And by the way, this does not apply to bass only. Mixing your track on studio monitors ensures that your track translates well to other speakers, boosted or not. And notice that I keep on saying relatively flat instead of just flat. This is because of the common misconception that studio monitors are supposed to be flat and not have character. In fact, what I usually hear is, if your studio monitors have character, then they're bad studio monitors, which is kind of ridiculous if you think about it, because every pair of studio monitors does in fact have character, because if they didn't, they would all sound the same, but they don't. And no one pair is objectively better than the other. It all comes down to your personal preference, but for whatever reason, people don't like hearing that. Anyway, let's move on to the dynamics of your room. So I've mentioned a million times now that studio monitors offer a relatively flat response, but what I haven't mentioned is they are heavily affected by the room that you put them in. This depends on the shape of the room, the size, which we're going to talk about just now, and the acoustic treatment. Acoustic treatment is made to absorb the reflection and buildup of bass in your room. The reflections in this case means the reverb or the echo in your room. This is something that's present in every normal room, but we don't notice it because it's become the norm. We only notice it in its extreme nature. This is in empty rooms or bathrooms. For instance, I'm in the bathroom right now and you guys can tell that there's a lot of echo, but in the studio there's less echo. So while it's completely normal in real life, when it comes to making music, it's a bad thing. Because imagine if you're in a room making music and everything you hear has reverb. You wouldn't be very accurate if you needed to add reverb to your instruments, because everything you hear already has reverb. This is solved by installing acoustic panels and having furniture in the room. Then the bass buildup is the apparent boost in low frequencies at certain parts of the room. In most cases, it's the corners. I'm sure you've had this happen to you where you're listening to music and you move to one part of the room and the bass is suddenly louder, but at other parts, it's much lower. This in a studio is solved by installing what is called bass traps. This is very expensive, by the way, and you are very unlikely to do it correctly in your room unless you hire a professional. A cheaper and more effective alternative is by having what is called monitor headphones. These are basically like studio monitors the way that I explained them, but they're not affected by the room you are in. This particular pair that I have here is the Audio-Technica M40X, and it's really good for the price. I'm gonna have them linked below along with every studio monitor that I'm gonna talk about in this video. And by the way, if you're new to this channel, my name is Tozi. I make videos about music production, DJing, and the tech involved. And if that's something that's interesting to you, please consider subscribing. Now, back to the video. The size of your room also plays a huge role in the sound of your speakers, especially the size of the speakers themselves. The most common sizes for home studios are 5, 6, 7, and 8 inches. The inches here refer to the size of your cone, and generally the bigger the louder and the more bass you get. The size of the monitors you choose should be directly proportional to the size of your room, meaning that if you have a small room like me, then you should get maybe 5 or 6 inches, and if you have a bigger room, then you can get 7 to 8 inches. Obviously there's bigger speakers than that, but I'm making this video with the assumption that you're building a home studio and not something gigantic. But you should know that big speakers in a small room would overwhelm you with bass, and small speakers in a big room would just not be enough. So now that I've given you the information you need to make an informed purchase, I will give you a list of top 5 speakers that have been tried and tested by millions of producers all around the world. I won't tell you anything you don't need to know about them because ultimately that's a waste of your time, and I will have them linked below. And this video is not sponsored in any way, but if you use the links below, you will be helping the channel. And remember, they all sound different. It comes down to your personal preference, and if you can get your song to sound good on any of these, it's going to translate well to other speakers. First on the list is the Rocket series from KRK. The latest generation on these is 5, but the 4th gen is still being sold and it's still a good option. There's 3 sizes. There's the 5-inch, 7-inch, and 8-inch. So again, if you have a small room, you would go with the 5, and if your room is bigger, then 7 or 8. KRK monitors are famous for their bass, and the misconception is that they have too much bass, when the reality is it's not that it's louder, it's just more pronounced and it's just punchy. You can watch my video where I compare them to another pair of studio monitors in this list if you click here. So the bass port on these is on the front, which is perfect if you want to have your speakers directly next to a wall. There's also a screen at the back that allows you to tune the speakers to your room, and there's also an app that allows you to do the same thing using the mic on your phone, but that still doesn't fix bad acoustics in your room. KRK also has a Classic series, which is the one that I have here. It's the Classic 5, Classic 7, and Classic 8. They're basically the same kind of speaker with the same response, but it's in the body of the previous generation. Number 2 on this list is the LP series from Kali Audio, and there's 2 options here. It's the LP6 and the LP8. In my opinion, Kali Audio is one of the most underrated speaker manufacturer, and they also have an IN series which comes in 2 sizes as well. It's the IN5 and the IN8. The difference with these is that they're 3-way instead of 2-way. There's one driver for the lows, which is the bass, and then another driver for the mids, and then the last one is for the high frequencies. These are so good that Ben Jordan uses them as his main speakers, and I know that means nothing, but he's what I would consider an audio nerd and he uses them. And again, that doesn't mean anything big, but it's just interesting, at least to me. Anyway, number 3 on this list is the T series from Adam Audio. So it's 3 sizes. It's the T5V, the T7V, and the T8V. And these are the best looking studio monitors in this list in my opinion. They're very minimal and expensive looking, which I like very much. They're easily spotted by the ribbon tweeter on top, which is good for longer listening sessions because it causes less ear fatigue. The bass port is on the back this time, meaning that you don't have the freedom to put them right against the wall, but the sound is so good that it kinda doesn't matter. And then number 4 on this list is the HS series from Yamaha. Honestly, this video would not make sense without these. These are very popular, and they're popular for a reason. They've been tried and tested by producers for years now, and they are based on the NS10 by Yamaha, which is one of the most popular studio monitors ever, really. There's 3 sizes. There's the HS5, HS7, and HS8. And I know a lot of producers who swear by these and refuse to get anything else. And then finally, number 5, it's the Iris series from PreSonus. The latest generation on these is the 2nd, but the 1st is still being sold. I have a review of the 2nd gen, and you can watch it here or here. Not sure which corner it is, but you'll find it. They come in 2 sizes. It's the 5 and 8-inch. There's also a 3.5 and a 4, but I don't recommend those for music production. The cone on them caves in instead of out, which means that it's much harder to damage them. And there's also a metal grill protecting the tweeter as well. The design around the tweeter makes it so that the sound spreads out evenly, and the bass port is in the front again, which is an added plus. PreSonus also makes microphones, audio interfaces, headphones, and a music production software. So if you're one of those people that like to be in the same ecosystem, then this might be a good option for you. To watch my review of the PreSonus Iris 5, click here, and to see how they compare to the KRKs, click here, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.